Earlier on this year, a AAA games executive at Ubisoft made some rather baffling remarks about the current state of the industry. And it was the fact that players need to start getting comfortable with not owning games. This is a comment that's been posted endlessly by people mocking Ubisoft with all of their trailers and everything since it was made. But the truth is, this is what all these corporations really want, not even just in gaming. It's about getting people to spend with recurrent payments, having that regular monthly payment of $10, $15, $20. And look, at Star Wars Outlaws, this is a perfect example of it. FOMO tactics, in which if you want to play on the true day one, you have to spend at least $110, almost $40 more. And obviously there's paywalled content there with a pre-order bonus. I think it's a Jabba the Hutt quest that's specific with this gold or ultimate edition. And look, the other option is you just spend $18 for the month and then maybe you cancel afterwards. That is what these companies want. They want people just sticking along with these subscriptions, maybe forgetting about it, and those payments continue, and they make far more than what they would make with the standard edition. That is the nature of the industry, and it's something that is only going to continue, and yes, it is irritating me endlessly. But Star Wars Outlaws, the game is technically out now, and it is one of those experiences that has been mired in controversy for months. The fact that the voice actress or motion capture performance actor looks like this and the character looks like this, a lot of people not understanding why it isn't just a one-to-one translation. I guess a creative decision on Ubisoft's part, baffling one, I suppose. Then there's also the premium editions. I already talked about that, paywall and content, just not a good look, and it continues to happen. Not just a specific Ubisoft issue. This is industry-wide. Then there was the fact that we had the IGN gameplay, which gave us a great look at Star Wars Outlaws, and it made a lot of negative impressions, unfortunately. Going so much that a Bank of America analyst asked Ubisoft, hey, you guys think maybe you should delay the game, work on some of the major flaws with the experience, and Ubisoft's like, no, everybody's gonna love this game come release date. Then there was the fact that apparently a bunch of influencers were flown out by Ubisoft, probably spent at least $5,000 to $10,000 on each of these individuals, bringing them to Disney trips and such. It's just not a good look in this industry, and again, it's not exclusive to Ubisoft. This is something that the ethics of this has been a conversation for years in media in general. But now we come upon launch day, in which Star Wars Outlaws reviews are kind of exactly what we all expected. It's mostly around that 7 or 8 out of 10, while there are a couple higher scores sprinkled in, and then some much lower scores, which I do want to talk about. It's kind of what you expect out of Ubisoft with Star Wars Outlaws, and that's primarily what I felt through my first couple of hours. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but these are some of the major impressions coming from some of the major outlets out there, some of the ones that I've followed for years. We have Kinda Funny Games giving their impressions. I actually kind of found this surprising because of how positive they usually are about just games in general.
For me, this is such a 4 out of 10 video game. I know how hard games are to make. I know how many people worked on this, and I know how hard they tried. The final product is so heartless, where I think it misses in terms of story, character, gameplay. This game should be, beyond a shadow of a doubt, a Game of the Year contender for Greg Miller.
I feel like Star Wars Outlaws, the first open world Star Wars game, it's exactly that. It should be a Game of the Year. This is a game that I initially was very excited by, just with the possibilities, but it does seem to be very restrictive with what it's trying to do with its gameplay. And with the story, I have not experienced enough of it to form an opinion, but the gameplay so far has been very unimaginative, and that does scare me for the hours to come. IGN, this was their review, and I have problems with what they're saying here, but they say Star Wars Outlaws is good, but
I really liked Star Wars Outlaws and think it's a good game, but it does one particularly annoying thing: it makes you drop your secondary weapon too often. Want a melee? Drop your weapon.
Yeah, this is absolute horrific design. I have no idea how this got past QA. This is something I've noticed. You have some extremely powerful weapons you're introduced to, you carry them, you use them for a little bit, and then it just drops from random movement. It really is baffling that this happened.
Crawl into a vent? Dropped. Climb a wall? Drop it. You'll always be able to hold onto your primary blaster, but it's tough to make the most out of weapons like the sniper rifle when you can't always carry it to the best vantage point to use it. Fortunately, the story of Outlaws is a blast. It was a wild ride, and I'm glad we finally got a game that truly captures the seedy underbelly world of Star Wars.
We were going to get that with Star Wars 1313. Thank you, Disney, for ruining that. They shut it down.
The Syndicate reputation system is a huge highlight too, with missions having fun, unexpected twists, and the choices you make having actual impact on the gameplay. gameplay. For example, if your reputation with the Hutts is good, they'll let you explore Tatooine without much conflict. But if it's not so good, well, lots of fighting.
I don't know. I don't feel like that's actually an example of true consequence. I don't really see how that's a highlight in my opinion. It seems very surface level, but say what you will. That's IGN's opinion, I suppose.
You might not mind getting into blaster fights often, but as fun as they are, combat does get pretty repetitive after a while, and the stealth isn't much better. Not to mention,
You would think that would factor a little bit more in their review. Just saying.
I encountered a slew of bugs from falling through the ground and missing lines of dialogue. Overall, Star Wars Outlaws is a good game, and there's a lot more we had to say about it.
I do wonder where's the praise for the actual gameplay experience. I saw some stuff for the story, but nothing necessarily in terms of actual combat, which is a major part of the experience. I do find that funny. Anyway, we also have Mr. Matty Plays, probably one of the most critical reviews I have seen so far of Star Wars Outlaws, and he pointed out two great examples, and you'll see that in some of the gameplay I have of myself on the screen, but he mentions that I received Star Wars Outlaws, or I reviewed it, and I'm bummed to say it didn't jive with me as a Star Wars fan. Andromeda level motion capture, that is very, very true. I do think there's a difference between the pre-rendered cutscenes, you know, those fancy ones are very expensive, taxing on the system, they don't do too much of that, versus the real-time cutscenes. You're immediately introduced that within the first hours, and it looks horrific, it looks extremely ugly, it looks wooden. And yeah, he has gameplay here showing it. We'll look at that in a second, but he says, you're constantly forced in frustrating stealth segments without the improper mechanics to support it. There's a huge missed opportunity with the reputation system that is extremely easy to manipulate. Nyx is cute and the world looks pretty solid. I agree with Nyx. Nyx is cute. He's like one of those usual companions you get in these Star Wars games. I feel like every single time they have to have one. Not necessarily just in games, but in media in general. But
he told me you could mod my speeder.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I've got every part you could want. I mean, mag fins, aftermarket sensors, booster coils.
How about a hydro repulsor?
look at that face. Look at that. How does this get past QA? How does Ubisoft think that this is acceptable? And this is not just a Star Wars Outlaws problem. This is something I have seen in the Assassin's Creed games. It's like, if you want me to enjoy or get invested in some of the side content, and oftentimes this is in the main story segment, as I mentioned earlier on, in the first couple minutes, you have stuff like this. I just have no idea how they don't think that they're not investing into this technology further, because this is not acceptable in 2024, in my opinion.
No.
You just said every part I could want.
It's like you see the mouth moving, but the eyes is not, and the face is just completely stiff, devoid of actual emotion. Takes you out of the experience. It's immersion breaking. And then he also pointed out that the AI is a big problem. You'll see that within some of the footage and some of the clips I hopefully will have on the screen. This is one of them. He shows off. Yeah, so all of those worries that we saw within the previews and everything, they were very real, and they are very much here, unfortunately. And after Cyberpunk 2077, I cannot help myself from not looking at AI in games, and Star Wars Outlaws, I immediately just tested it out, and it was very clear, based on the character reactions around you, it was dumb as fucking bricks. We have another review, another example of some technical bugs that players are running into. This one, I think this is a takedown animation. Let's see. There's the terrible takedown animations. Oh my god. And then you have a bug that ruins the stealth segment. Yeah, I mean, it is day one. There bugs like this are bound to happen, but yeah, that is definitely unfortunate. And then Gene Park points out Star Wars Outlaws is buggy. I didn't see anything as egregious as that hilarious clip going around. I think that's the one from Matty Plays. But definitely NPC friendlies or enemies would just stop. The AI can be so stupid, a bunch of bad guys just line their bikes up for me like this so I can shoot them. And then one of the most critical reviews coming from reviewers is Eurogamer, which they said Star Wars Outlaws review stripped back Ubisoft formula is admirable yet doomed death by 1,000 huts. And Eurogamer giving it 2 out of 5 stars, saying Massive bravely peels away the many layers of Ubisoft open world isms in Star Wars Outlaws, it's a fatal error. Later in this review, they mention as undeniably Moorish as Outlaws' Bethesda-style trick of leaving question marks just off the main path will always be. The traversal is far too painful and the payoff in gameplay or narrative are otherwise far too limited for me to ever want to go looking for them. And then remember, if you're doing this is usually side content, side quests, you get those horrific wooden facial animations. It just makes side missions, side activities meaningless. You get nothing out of it except for the fact that it's just something to do, another checklist item or a checklist activity. Too often I found myself thinking of Dragon's Dogma 2 director Hideki Itsuno's witheringly appropriate comments earlier this year about fast travel, ubiquitous in Outlaws, and what it says about travel itself in your game. Travel is boring. That's not true. It's only an issue because your game is boring. All you have to do is make travel fun. This is easier said than done, of course, and I have sympathy for massive entertainment, the devs behind this game, and having to transition to wide open worlds from more concentrated ones, but it hasn't worked here. And then they make some remarks about stealth, saying the issue with stealth is painfully basic and somehow at once both far too easy, but also far too easy to fail at the hands of some awkward systems and controls. Dumb as Bricks AI is an example of that. And then Eurogamer does conclude saying the result with Outlaws is a series of quite painful comparisons that lacks the branching open stealth of an Arkham game, the systemic options of a Dishonored, or the incisive, relentlessly satisfying speed of picking enemies off in Assassin's Creed. It lacks the linear polish and charisma of Uncharted, lacks the animation flow to its yellow ledge platforming next to a horizon, or the sheer joy of taking platforming and making it into an actual game in of itself, as is in Star Wars Jedi. And somewhat nightmarishly for Ubisoft Massive, which couldn't have known about this when committing to it at the time, Outlaws opts to tell a Star Wars heist story in a world after Andor, which has already done so with such sensitivity, humanity, and precision that Kay and Co's cameo-ridden non-event is unfortunately left feeling light years behind. And those are some ugly comparisons, but so far I'm only, my first impressions of Outlaws has been pretty awful. I think that this is got to be probably the worst impressions I've had so far in 2024, and this is a game that is right up my alley. I think that the gunplay is enjoyable, but everything outside of that, it feels dated in many regards, and I feel like that's a feeling I've had with a lot of Ubisoft games over the last couple of years, and I feel like they keep trying to toy around with the formula, but it's not iterating in a way that feels satisfying. We did have another review, this one coming from Gamer Guides, in which this is another critical one, giving the game a 50. I love how there's just such little pros and cons. Huge open world regions. There are huge open world regions, I'll tell you that. Very empty, though, unfortunately. Faction system has great armor sets up for grabs, a full accessibility suite for cognitive vision and hearing related settings, middling story with uninteresting characters, outdated and janky stealth gameplay, tedious mission structure and uncreative level design, a repetitive third-person shooter action, terrible lockpicking and slicing minigames. I will say that lockpicking minigame is some of the worst design I have ever seen. There's a Wordle minigame I did really much enjoy, but the lockpicking I think is god-awful. Mediocre rewards that make exploration unsatisfying. We did have another review, this one coming from CBR. Star Wars Outlaws will be flawed fun for fans of a galaxy far, far away. And I know there's going to be people coming into the comment section saying, well, I enjoyed it, it's enjoyable fun. And I think that's a way that you can feel about a lot of these Ubisoft games. They are enjoyable fun. Just don't set the bar too high, and really you should set it as low as you can. If you want something to shoot off a couple of enemies, there's a story there, it's just content. But the fact that how Ubisoft has been handling the monetization, how they've been talking about this game, it just makes me feel like this should have been far better. And from the reviewers that I trust, it's very frightening hearing their opinion, and then even my first impressions, it just major red flags going off in my head. PC Gamer gave it the game a 73, saying Ubisoft's open world Star Wars adventure succeeds at the little things, but not much else shines. And we did, like I said, there are some positive reviews, although some of the opinions I'm seeing in these reviews just, it does not make much sense to me. So Hobby Consola says it's one of the best Star Wars adventures and also the best open world that Ubisoft has ever made. Gamer Guide saying Star Wars Outlaws review, the Star Wars game of a generation, which is quite the thing to say when those Respawn Jedi games exist. And they go on to mention, which I find this just insane remarks, but they say Jedi Fallen Order is easily among the best games under the Star Wars umbrella, and LEGO Star Wars has just been carrying the banner for years. Now, however, it also feels real as Star Wars Outlaw joins those illustrious ranks as one of the greatest Star Wars games of all time. time. Massive Entertainment created breathtaking environments across the galaxy, and I think there are some beautiful environments just from my first couple of hours. I think Ubisoft makes some great environments in general. They delivered a fast-paced combat system true to the Scoundrel style, okay, and crafted a story that rivals the modern movies. Okay, we'll just continue. I'm just gonna ignore that one. Star Wars Outlaws is simply put the Star Wars game of a generation. Okay, and their opinion, I suppose. And then there are, other reviews. Star Wars Outlaws review Beautiful Thieves. And they go on to mention that Outlaws is an excellent Star Wars game. It also aggressively is not for me. I felt tangible disappointment whatever a new mission required quietly infiltrating an enemy base. But I also recognize that the systems at work here are well-crafted ones. The enemy AI is fun to learn the limits of. The limits of is called it's dumb as shit. I mean, you can experiment a little bit. Come on, guy. Cyberpunk 2077 taught us that experiment with this. Make sure that it actually is functional, and it's not. You have multiple ways of quietly taking out guards. There's like 3 different ways. You have your furry companion Nyx that can distract or attack an enemy, and then you have your laser pistol in which it can shoot at an enemy and incapacitate them, but the reload for that specific setting is so darn slow it almost makes it unusable. And then obviously you have the horrific takedown animations. That's what you have at your disposal. That is the great systems at display here. You have multiple ways of quietly taking out guards. Most bases have alternative routes for infiltration, except when you get in the vent systems. The grenade system is awful, but combat is otherwise tense and engaging. There's all sorts of little activities like speeder racing and gambling. If you're looking to live that scoundrel lifestyle in a galaxy far, far away, then this game is made for you. I have a lot of issues so far with Star Wars Outlaws, and I'm going to hold off with saying anything about the story, but so far, I do think that a game built around stealth should be far less restrictive than what I've seen so far. Like, it's bad enough that the AI is dumb, there's limited tools at your disposal, there's insta-fail stealth at play, in which pretty much you just get reloaded to a last checkpoint, really not any consequence, just lazy restrictive design. There's also the fact that you're forced into stealth sections. You know, a game about open world exploration, about freedom, you don't get a lot of that, unfortunately, with the mission design. But you indeed get a new Star Wars story, new characters, some fun mini games, and, you know, some fun blasting, I suppose, and that's more than enough for a lot of people. But for myself, I just see the wooden facial animations, the dumb AI, the one game-breaking bug that I ran into within the first hour, and I just get irritation that unfortunately is kind of growing as I continue to play this game and see that the combat experience is extremely shallow. Anyway, Star Wars Outlaws is officially in its early access period right now. Are you playing it? Are you planning to? Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, let me know what you make of the review so far. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video. Consider subscribing for more content like this in the future. I'll see you later.